Chapter 9, Zelda's Lullaby. Ow! A sickening pain blossomed through Link's body. Dimly, he was aware of striking a stair and tumbling down several more. His body finally came to a halt, not that Link noticed, for the world had become an incoherent mess of noise and sound. At first he couldn't comprehend anything. He felt like he was floating, a leaf tossed upon a breeze. The world seemed too bright, and he couldn't open his eyes. Then he became aware of the blood pounding in his ears and two voices coming from far away. He could hear someone else, too. Navi. He could feel someone firmly holding his shoulders. Another pair of hands gripped his ankles, and he had a vague realization that he was being carried. What had even happened? Where was he? The cogs and gears of his mind seemed jammed, and no amount of effort would make them turn. Saria? The word was a tiny moan that went unnoticed. No, the girl didn't sound like Saria at all. It was someone else. Link recognized a boy's voice, too. He wanted to open his eyes, but even the briefest squint made his head blaze with pain. Too bright, he thought. Everything's too bright. What were you two doing? The girl demanded. How did he even get on the wall? He climbed up a tree, Navi replied. Should we be carrying him like this? The boy asked. What if he's broken something? Irritation crept into the girl's voice. Just help me get him on the grass before somebody finds us. Maybe we should have gotten Impa first. That was the boy again. He's no street urchin from the look of him. Oh, just be quiet and help me. The girl snapped, sounding wearied by the incessant chatter. Do you want me to go and find Impa? Navi asked. Ewan knows where she is. What do you suppose those scars are from? The younger boy asked, clearly not listening. And why is he wearing a skirt? Is he a girl? If Link had not been so dazed, he would have been insulted. Be quiet, the girl snapped. I was only wondering, came the innocent reply. Okay, stop here and put him down gently. Thud. Link moaned as he was dropped unceremoniously onto the ground. I said gently! The girl sounded really cross now. Honestly, you could have hurt him. Is he going to be okay? Ewan asked, sounding afraid that he'd done Link some permanent harm. I have some stuff in my satchel that can help him. Give me your water skin and go find Impa. But, go Ewan! Couldn't she speak more quietly? Link thought, groaning. He heard footsteps receding into the distance, then felt the cool touch of a water skin against his chapped lips. He pried his eyelids open a crack until he was just able to make out the girl leaning over him. Drink this, she said. It will make you feel better. Link drank obediently, gulping down the cool liquid until it was abruptly taken away. I can't give you too much, the girl said gently. She brushed the hair away from his eyes and then pulled his hat off. You're bleeding, she murmured, sounding anxious. It's not as bad as it looks, Navi said. Just a scalp wound. They usually look worse than they really are. Link forced his eyelids fully open. He rose a hand to shield his vision, his eyes seemingly unaccustomed to the afternoon light. He saw the girl kneeling beside him, a small vial of liquid in one hand. Can you sit up for me? She asked. Link didn't answer. He was too busy thinking about how oddly dressed she was. She wore a pink robe, an ornate silver belt, and a fine pink apron with the emblem of Hyrule's royal family. Around her neck, she wore a necklace with a dazzling ruby as its centerpiece. The oddest thing about her, he thought, was the elaborate headdress with a medallion at its front. It was all a bit excessive, even for winter, and way too neat. He also thought she was far too clean, her fingernails too well trimmed, and her skin oddly pale. She looked like a porcelain doll that was all dressed up for display, like the ones he'd seen in one of the many stalls he'd passed. Had she ever been outside before? The girl's smile faltered. Oops, did I say that out loud? Of course I have, she answered, sounding more bemused by the question than annoyed. Link tried to scramble upright. His body protested at the effort, and his stomach lurched. Hold still, she scolded him. I still need to wash the cut on your head. She doused his head with the contents of the water skin, grabbed a small towel from her satchel, and then wiped his injury. He flinched when she applied a salve that stung fiercely and smelled terrible. I said hold still! Link grumbled a reply. The girl sat back on her heels and looked him over, examining her handiwork. I take care of plenty of injured animals when I find them, she said, pleasantly. I tend to strays now and again. Not that I think you are a stray. Here." She handed him the water skin, but Link just shook his head, causing spots of light to swim and dance across his vision. "Are you alright, Link?" Navi asked, flying beside him. "You're lucky you didn't break your neck." "I'm fine," Link said. He tried to stand up, but the dizziness returned, leaving him on all fours. "You are not fine," the girl snapped. "For goodness sake, sit down." As he tried to push himself to his feet, she grabbed his shoulders and planted his backside on the ground. "That's better," she said. Resigning himself to obeying the girl's commands, and too woozy to argue, Link looked around. He was sitting next to a stone path with bushes on either side of it. They were blooming with bright flowers of white, blue, and red. That's odd for the middle of winter. Elsewhere, Link could see fruit trees and lush grass of vibrant green. It reminded him of the forest, only it was too tidy and far too tame. The roses and bushes were neatly pruned, and not a single leaf seemed out of place. The stone path that cut in between the garden beds split in two, meandering around a fountain before it turned a corner and disappeared. "I'm in Hyrule Castle," Link mumbled stupidly. He'd been too dazed to realize where he was. Now he recognized the tall stone spires rising above him. Oh no, he thought. All his hopes of stealthily making his way through the castle were gone. Dashed when he'd lingered too long on the wall. How was he going to get out of this one? "This fell out of your bag." Link caught the girl's eyes on him. She was holding a satchel in one hand and the Kokiri emerald in the other. "Hey, give that back!" he demanded, snatching the stone back. He saw a brief flash of surprise in the girl's eyes. "It's alright," she said, slightly taken aback. "I wasn't going to steal it." Link thrust the stone back in his bag. Little did he realize that she was staring at him intently, as if realizing something for the first time. "You are the boy from the forest, aren't you?" she asked. "Impa told me someone is bringing you to Castletown." For a moment, Link was stunned. He stared at her and then asked cautiously, "How do you know who I am?" The girl went slightly pink in the cheeks. "It's hard to explain," she said sheepishly. "I feel like I've seen you before. In a dream." She paused and then chuckled quietly. "You probably think that's silly, don't you?" "No, not really," Link managed weakly. The potion she'd given him must have been starting to work, because his head didn't feel as sore, and it was easier to think. "I have weird dreams too. They scare me sometimes." "Really?" The girl looked intrigued. Something stirred in his mind, and he realized he had also seen her in a dream. The fairy lay dead, slumped against the toe of his boot as raindrops spattered her blackened body. No. Trying to block out the memory of what had happened afterwards, Link squeezed his eyes shut. "Do you need something more for the pain?" the girl asked, concerned. She gently grabbed his shoulder, as though afraid he was about to topple over. Link shook his head. He regarded her for a moment, thinking as quickly as his sore head would allow. The fact that they had both glimpsed each other in a dream was too much of a coincidence to ignore. She was important. He should have guessed that the moment he saw her, judging from her attire. "What's your name?" he asked, meeting her suddenly bewildered gaze. "How could you not know who I am?" The girl sounded scandalized. Scowling, Link held back a litany of impolite retorts. Oh, it was the girl's turn to frown, and then she looked abashed. "How silly of me. Of course you wouldn't know. I am Princess Zelda of House Nohansen." Link exchanged a glance with Navi, who looked as surprised as he did. At least this meant he wouldn't have to find his way around the castle now. "Well, this is not exactly the entrance I had in mind," Navi said. Then something caught her attention, and she spun around. She gasped. "Oh no, we're in trouble." Link heard it too. Heavy footsteps marching quickly upon the stone. He stuffed his hat back on, and with a little help from Zelda, staggered upright. His heart sank as a group of 15 guardsmen marched purposefully along the path, donned in their blue and red uniforms, with the Hyrule royal family crest emblazoned on their chests. They made a formidable sight. At another time and place, Link might have been thrilled. These men were real knights, not figures from a story. There was just one problem. They were headed right for him, and they did not look happy. Navi?" he squeaked. She didn't reply. Link considered running, but dismissed the idea quickly. The guards could outrun him, and he didn't even know where to go. "Ewan!" Zelda hissed. She didn't look remotely frightened, marginally concerned maybe, but not terrified. "Something tells me he did not go straight to Impa," Navi whispered. "He probably ran until one of the guards stopped to see what the matter was," Zelda said quietly. "Just stay still, keep quiet, and let me do the talking." The guards quickly surrounded the pair. Navi squeaked as some of the guards raised their bows and took aim, ready to draw in loose at a moment's notice. The meaning was clear. One wrong move, and this will go straight through you. One of these archers had an arrow leveled at Link's chest from less than a few feet away. Link tensed, as though convinced that alone could stop the arrow in its path. He knew enough about hunting to know that wasn't the case. "Princess Zelda, my lady, come away from him at once," one man bade her urgently. Zelda didn't obey. Instead, as the guards took aim, she quickly jumped in front of Link. She drew herself up, arms outstretched, staring at the guard's leader with a look of outrage. At another time, Link might have been impressed that the girl stared down at the fully geared swordsman who'd spoken. He was a broad-shouldered man with a golden knot across his breastplate and a red plume atop his helmet. "Captain Dragain," Zelda hollered bravely, her eyes bright with defiance. "What do you think you are doing? This boy is a guest of House Nohansen, and therefore under my protection." She stared at the soldiers who returned her gaze with a mixture of amazement and annoyance. "I demand you stay your weapons at once. If my father hears about this, he will have you thrown in the dungeons or mucking out the stables for a week." Some of the archers lowered their bows and relaxed. There was even a short snort of laughter from two men, who'd stopped when their commander's eyes fell on them. Several other soldiers who were standing behind Link were neither so easily deterred or amused. Captain Dragain did not look remotely impressed. "Ewan reported an intruder in the yard and said he was armed," he said gruffly. "More likely you coaxed it out of him, sir," Zelda remarked. "The boy will not be harmed," Dragain said wearily. "Now please step aside, young lady, so I can take him into custody. That sword was probably stolen, and I mean to find out if he's a thief or not." "We are not thieves!" Navi yelled shrilly. She flew up to the guard's face, drawing murmurs of surprise from the gathered soldiers. "My friend was dared into climbing a tree over the wall, and he fell." If Zelda noticed the lie, she gave no sign of it. "I will find out the truth soon enough, miss," Captain Dragain said evenly, not sounding remarkably surprised for someone who'd nearly been smacked in the face by a fairy. His attention returned to Zelda. "Now step aside at once, and let's be done with this nonsense." "I will not," Zelda replied, her face red with fury. "As Princess of Hyrule, I order you to withdraw. I will see that my guest does not cause any trouble." "Princess, he could be an assassin for all we know," Dragain reasoned. "Children don't normally carry Goron forged." "An assassin?" Zelda spat. "He is only a boy." "Now, young lady," Dragain said briskly, the patience draining rapidly from his voice. "We can always drag you, and the boy, to your father. I doubt he will find this." "What's this?" A slow, cold voice drifted across the yard. A man dressed in black armor, a cloak rippling behind him, strode toward the circle of archers. Link's insides turned to ice as he beheld the man who had haunted his dreams, the desert man. It's him, Link thought, fighting against every instinct that told him to run. Oh no, it's actually him. Captain Dragain swore under his breath and then turned to face the newcomer. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, forgetting his earlier attempt to remain calm in front of Zelda. The Gerudo's cold eyes looked as though they could have frozen the officer to the spot, but they didn't remain on him for long. As Ganondorf's gaze fell on her, Zelda shifted uncomfortably, and her furious gaze seemed to melt. Then the man's eyes met Link's with such an intensity that Link could neither blink nor breathe. The man smirked and then turned away, disregarding him. Dizzied, Link let out a tense breath, his head swimming. He almost swayed, but then Zelda quietly stepped beside him, grabbing his wrist. The small comfort was enough to stop him from toppling over. "Tell me, Lord Dragain, are you and your men so incompetent that it takes 15 royal guardsmen to deal with a child?" Ganondorf all but guffawed. "How utterly tragic. I'd hate to see how well you'd cope with something a little more dangerous." That almost sounded like a threat, Link thought. If the guards noticed, they gave no sign of it. "Either state your business or be off, Lord Dragmire," Dragain growled. "This is not your concern. As a matter of fact, Captain Dragain, anything that threatens the security of this castle is my concern." Ganondorf's voice had grown dangerous.
The young Prince Iwan came by looking for Impa. He told me an armed child had appeared on the wall. Perhaps you will allow me to take care of the boy. Surely this is not a task befitting a man of your station.
What did you do to Iwan? Zelda demanded.
Your accusations disappoint me. I did nothing to the prince.
Ganondorf replied in mock horror, one hand going to his chest in feigned sincerity. The gesture made Link flinch.
Now, Captain Dragane, allow me to relieve you of this trivial concern.
Link's stomach twisted itself into knots. He was going to be sick. Sweat trickled down his forehead, and try as he might, he couldn't get enough air into his lungs. This can't be happening. Zelda's grip on his arm was now so tight it actually hurt.
I decide what to do with intruders, Dragmire.
Dragane's voice was dangerously quiet. Link got the impression this was not the first time the two had come to a disagreement. And the last time I checked, you have no authority here. Ganondorf's cold composure turned to icy fury at that, and the two stared at each other. The tension was palpable, like standing on cracks upon a frozen lake. To Link, it seemed like an eternity before anything happened. The guards around them shifted uneasily. Some of them glanced at each other, no doubt wondering if they should intervene. One guard bravely stepped forward to do just that, clearing his throat. What in the name of the goddesses is going on here? A new voice rang out across the court. Finally, Zelda breathed in relief. She relaxed her grip on Link's now numb arm. That's Impa, she whispered. Don't worry, she'll sort this out. Impa stood a head taller than either the captain of the guard or Ganondorf. If Dragane looked furious, it was nothing compared to the fire burning in the woman's crimson eyes. She's the other woman from my dream, Link thought, trying to swallow and finding he couldn't. His mouth was too dry. A boy in a red coat and black breeches was trailing behind the tall Sheikah. Zelda fixed him with an icy stare, making Link quite certain this was her brother. Iwan smiled sheepishly in return and mouthed, I'm sorry. When the boy spotted Ganondorf, he made a terrified squeak and hid behind Impa. Impa scowled at Ganondorf, then she froze on the spot, her eyes moving from Link to Zelda, back again, and then finally to the guards. Are you men, dogs, or cowards that you would draw your weapons upon two children, including the king's own daughter? None of the guards looked very comfortable with that particular accusation.
Forgive me, Lady Impa. This boy carries a Goron-forged blade, Captain Dragane explained, almost stammering under her glare. We thought he might be an assassin. I intended to have him searched and arrested. We intended no harm.
Truly? She asked. Cocking one eyebrow, she took in the sight of their weapons. I'm glad. She turned to stare at Ganondorf, seeming almost surprised to see him. Your presence is not required here, Lord Dragmire. It was a clear dismissal. Ganondorf sneered and turned with a swish of his cloak. As he did, the very air seemed to sigh with relief. I am sorry Iwan disturbed you, Captain, Impa said calmly to Dragane. You may go. Take your men with you. I will escort the boy out the gate once I have finished with him. Finished with me? What does she mean by that? The icy chill of fear Link had felt did not subside completely. Is she going to punish me?
As you wish, my lady.
Dragane signaled to his men. They turned wordlessly and followed him up the path and out of sight. Navi let out a sigh of relief. So did Zelda. That was close, Navi said, echoing Link's thoughts. You are fortunate I came when I did, Link of the Kokiri, said Impa, sounding far calmer than she had a moment ago. Link was still too stunned at their near miss to speak, and his heart felt like it was beating faster than a honey-eater's wings. Impa regarded his flushed face for a moment before turning around to Iwan. With a quick word, she shooed the boy off. Should we find somewhere private? Zelda asked, glancing worriedly at their surroundings. This will do for now, Impa told her. I will know if anyone disturbs us, and I will find a way to explain why you were late for your lessons yet again. Are you all right, boy? Still dazed, Link almost jumped when she addressed him by name. I'm fine. Then he added in an equally befuddled voice. How do you know my name? A woman by the name of Sierra told me. I was to accompany her to meet you, but it would seem events did not go as planned, Impa said, tilting her head solemnly. We heard, Navi said, her voice sympathetic. I take it you knew her well? I did, Impa replied. I'm sorry. As am I, but now is not the time to grieve. Impa turned her gaze to Link. I trust you still have the Kokiri emerald on you? Nodding, Link removed the emerald from his bag and gazed at it, holding it tightly in his hands, feeling reluctant to part with its comforting warmth. "Don't worry, you can trust Impa," Zelda said. Reluctantly, Link nodded and then gave the woman the stone. "The Kokiri Emerald," Impa whispered. "I am sorry you've been put through this. Fate is a cruel mistress to bring such misfortune on a child. As it is, I have been expecting you. I admit, I thought it would be some time before we met, but already the threads of time weave around you." Impa's words were confusing and far from comforting. What do you mean?" Link asked, frowning at her. For a fleeting moment, Link thought Impa looked troubled. When the guardians to whom the Kokiri Emerald was entrusted died, a series of events was set in motion, Impa explained patiently. 6 weeks ago, I learned that you carried the emerald, for Sierra sensed its power. Recognizing it, she immediately came to inform me. "You've known about us that long?" Navi asked, sounding angry. "Why didn't you seek us out then?" "It was my wish to keep both of you out of danger and protect the stone for a little longer." Impa's calm answer betrayed no reaction to Navi's outcry. "The Lons agreed to keep you safe and asked for my people's protection, but after the raid, I knew we were out of time. Sierra moved you to an inn. The owner of the Silver Mare is a friend of the Sheikah, and so are his staff." Link was utterly lost. What did she mean by out of time? Zelda seemed to realize he was having trouble digesting all of this. "Do you remember how I said I seen you in a dream?" "Yeah," Link said slowly. "For the last few months, I have had the same dream every night. In the dream, Hyrule is blanketed with thick storm clouds that cast the land into darkness. I'm standing in a field when a black mist starts seeping through the trees like smoke and smothers everything. Then a bright green light pierces the night sky, and the dark mist disappears. When I look to see what caused the great plume of light, I see you and your fairy." "Me?" Link asked, totally perplexed. "How'd you know it was me?" When these dreams began, Zelda was able to sketch some of what she saw. She did so quite well, I might add. Impa said when Zelda concluded her take. There was a hint of pride in her voice, and Zelda's ears went a slight shade of pink. "The boy in that dream was indeed you." "What's so special about this dream?" Link asked. "Everyone has bad dreams," he faltered, not believing his own words. "The dream is a premonition," Impa explained. "What?" Link was really baffled now. "What's a premonition?" "Premonition," Navi corrected before quickly explaining what the word meant. "Thank you, Navi," Impa nodded gratefully before asking. "Tell me, Link, do you know about the Sacred Realm?" "Of course I do." Link was relieved he could finally explain something he knew about. "The Great Deku Tree taught me. He said it's a realm guarded by 3 stones and—" "That will do." Impa tried to cut him off but failed. "There's a 4th object, Link racked his brains, trying to remember what it was. He came up empty. Impa looked impressed regardless, and Link felt a rush of satisfaction. "I didn't think you'd know," she murmured. "You are correct. There is a 4th object, one kept by the royal family, though few remember its true purpose." As Impa spoke, Zelda reached into her pocket and withdrew a polished deep blue ocarina. A gold ring encircled its mouthpiece, and there, etched into the small ring, was the Triforce emblem. "The Ocarina of Time," Zelda said, holding the instrument out in her hand. "It contains fragments of artifacts known as Time Stones. They were used by the oldest Sheikah clans before their empire was stricken by a disaster of their own making. Together with these 3 stones, the ocarina opens the door to the Sacred Realm, the resting place of the Triforce." Link could just make out his reflection upon the ocarina's smooth surface, and then Zelda placed it back in her pocket. Impa cleared her throat. "In the last few days, Ganondorf has visited both the tribes who keep the other 2 spiritual stones, demanding they hand over the gems. They refused him, but that will not stop him. We know Ganondorf is trying to get into the Sacred Realm, but given what had happened to you on the ranch, it would appear he's growing impatient." "What happens if he gets into the Sacred Realm?" Link asked. "He will find the Triforce," Impa answered. "Do you know what happens when one touches it?" "They can wish for anything they want." Impa chuckled. "More or less. Ganondorf somehow happened upon a dark spirit in the form of Masked. It was sealed away by one of the Sheikah clans. If it enters the Sacred Realm, it will use the power of this Triforce to rule Hyrule and decimate both realms. I take it you are not familiar with the legends of Demise or the Interlopers." Link shook his head. He didn't have the faintest idea what those names meant. Impa explained it to him patiently. Those legends speak of a demon that tried to destroy Hyrule, extending its power far beyond our borders. That will happen again unless we prevent Ganondorf from reaching the Sacred Realm. So, this demon you mentioned? Navi chimed in. You were saying it wants to finish what it started? Exactly, Impa replied. The Triforce is the only thing that can stop it permanently. How was it stopped last time? Navi asked. As I said, it was sealed in a mask. The Skull Mask? Navi whispered. You know of it? The sudden sharpness in the Sheikah's tone took Link by surprise. I saw him curse the Great Deku Tree, Navi stammered, likewise uncomfortable with the scrutiny. He had a mask that made him invisible, and it looked like a skull. Impa's face grew dark. I suspected as much, though I was not able to confirm it until one of the Gerudo told me. If Ganondorf has that mask, and is already after the other two stones, we must move quickly before he takes them by force. We have to tell the king, Navi exclaimed. If Ganondorf is planning to... She stopped watching as Zelda lowered her eyes sadly and mumbled. I already tried. Impa too. I have already told you why he cannot, Impa said reproachfully, though her tone was gentle. I cannot allow anyone to know of your dreams. Almost everyone believes that only Sheikah possess your gift. If people thought you were part Sheikah, it would cause much harm to your family. I still don't understand why. Zelda almost sounded glum. Have you tried to stop Ganondorf? Navi interrupted, apparently lost in her own thoughts, having taken no notice of the brief exchange. Impa grimaced, and a shadow passed fleetingly over her face. It is not that simple, not without enraging Ganondorf's people, and I doubt the demon will allow us to harm his host so easily. How do we stop him then? Link asked. There is one other object that protects the gateway to the Sacred Realm. A sword seated in a pedestal within the Temple of Time. It's called the Master Sword, or the Blade of Evil's Bane. You can only gain access to it by placing all 3 spiritual stones on the altar in front of the Door of Time. The stones contain a fragment of the souls of the first sages. Spiritual stones, Ocarina of Time, Master Sword, Door of Time, first sages. Link wished Impa would slow down. His head was beginning to hurt, and not just because of his fall. He hoped Navi was making more sense of this than he was. Are you listening? Impa's voice grew brisk. This is important. Yes, Link said quickly. Impa didn't look entirely convinced. Navi came to his rescue. I'll fill him in if need be. Thank you, Navi, Impa said. Her eyes were almost boring holes in Link's tunic. As I was saying, the door will open when you play the Song of Time on the Ocarina Zelda showed you, but... Here Impa paused, as if considering her next words. Just briefly she seemed to hesitate before adding, There's only one person who can wield the Master Sword. Who? Link asked. Everybody looked at him. Navi looked remorseful. Oh great. Link knew there had to be a reason Ganondorf wanted the Kokiri Emerald so badly. He had hoped to see the end of it when he gave Zelda the stone. Even though the goddess Ferora had called him the hero reborn, he hadn't believed her. Not really. He still didn't want to believe it. He shook his head, and a faint sliver of panic went through him. Me? Yes, Link. You are the hero reborn. Me? I... Link stammered, feeling an urge to yell at Impa and Zelda. He wanted them to be wrong. He wasn't a hero. He was just a Kokiri, and all he wanted was for things to go back to the way they had been. To sit beneath the leafy bowers of the forest, blissfully unaware of the woes of the world beyond the woods. I'm not a hero. I'm just a Kokiri. A fleeting look of pain passed across Impa's face. I just want to go home, Link said, aware of how small his voice sounded. I know, child, Impa said soothingly, placing a hand on his shoulder. I am sorry, Link, but if Ganondorf even suspects who you are, you will be putting your home in grave danger. My people cannot enter the forest for long before they succumb to its magic, and there are not enough of us to protect an area as large as the Lost Woods. Link fought back the lump rising in his throat. You mean I can't go home? I can't see Saria or the others? Impa shook her head. No, child, you cannot. Link fell silent, preferring to stare at his boots rather than at Zelda or Impa. It's not fair, he thought. Link? Navi asked, sounding just as unhappy as he felt. It's not fair, Link repeated aloud.
I know, Impa said kindly. It is even crueler that such a destiny should be placed on one so young. I had hoped to delay this until you were ready, or find another way to stop Ganondorf.
Feeling Impa's eyes on him, Link looked up. There was sympathy in the Sheikah's eyes, and in Zelda's too. It made him uncomfortable. What do you need me to do? He asked quietly. You must get the other 2 stones, Zelda answered. Bring them to Impa, and then we can use the Triforce before anything terrible can happen. Can you do it? Link asked Impa.
Unfortunately, I cannot. Ganondorf has spread a web of lies in the royal court, enough to make them distrustful of me. Such a position is precarious, to say the least. And his spies are watching me outside these walls. If Ganondorf suspected I was up to something, he would have me arrested.
Link didn't grasp the gravity of this. He wasn't even sure what the royal court was. But, Link almost stammered, I don't even know where the other stones are. His head was really swimming now. He was beginning to think that he must have hit his head on the stairs harder than he thought.
One of the stones is being kept by the Goron tribe led by Darunia. The other by the river folk, the Zora,
Impa explained.
If you go in my stead, they will accept you.
The Zora? Link remembered the Zora he'd snagged while fishing the other day. So lost by what Zelda and Impa were saying, he didn't find the memory so amusing now.
Darunia's clan is closest, so you should start there.
He lives on Death Mountain, Impa continued.
The quickest way there is through my old hometown, Kakariko.
I know where that is. Link brightened a little at the familiar name. That wasn't to last when he realized where they were sending him. Death Mountain? The volcano by Kakariko? He thought Malone was joking when she called it that. It didn't sound friendly. Nor did it sound like the kind of place he'd find brooks bubbling beneath a canopy of trees with birds chirping among the branches. He sorely missed the tranquil simplicity of the lost woods in his grove.
Before we leave, I will teach you a song that will identify you as my messenger. Do you have an instrument to play on, or can you whistle?
I have an ocarina, Link began before mumbling, but I'm not that good at it. At Navi's encouragement, he took out his ocarina and Impa whistled a short and solemn tune. It didn't have the same energetic vibe as Saria's music. It sounded more like a song of longing, a melody that farewelled the bygone day. The first time Link tried repeating the song, it sounded more like the screech of an angry cat rather than the soothing melody of a lullaby. He asked after the third go.
Zelda's Lullaby, said Impa.
Link looked at Zelda, noting Zelda that she did appear remotely soothed by his performance. Impa paused, frowning. Then, as she stared towards the corner of a nearby wall, a flicker of amusement crossed her face.
Prince Iwan, she called. What have I told you about snooping?
A small face peered around the nearest wall. Iwan. He looked utterly astonished that he had been caught. Zelda looked furious.
Off with you now, Impa told him. Don't let me catch you doing that again, or I will find something to keep you occupied, and rest assured, you won't like it.
The boy scampered off, vanishing faster than he'd appeared. How much did he hear? Zelda asked, sounding worried. Impa shook her head. Aside from someone learning to play the ocarina, he didn't hear anything. But then as he stared after the prince, he thought of something. Iwan's your brother, isn't he? He never mentioned whether your mother could help us. Link knew he'd said something wrong as Zelda looked away, her eyes downcast. What is it? He asked, sensing he'd broached a subject she didn't want to talk about. My mother is dead, Zelda said softly. Link's mouth fell open in dismay. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Zelda shook her head and smiled sadly. It was a long time ago. I was very young, so I don't remember her all that well. Iwan is my half-brother. Link had no idea what this meant and just nodded. His mother is Queen Lilius Atkin. Even if she would help us, she is in no condition to do so now. Why?
She is taken ill,
Impa explained. I fear that should the worst come to pass, the king will be too distracted by grief to do anything. Except drink, Zelda said bitterly. He always drinks now.
This is no time for wallowing in such worries, princess,
Impa replied sternly. Zelda wilted with embarrassment. Of course. I'm sorry, Link. I forget myself. Zelda brushed her dress and looked up at him. Go find the stones. Hurry before Ganondorf has a chance to realize you've taken them. Once you retrieve them, I don't think you'll be very happy. I'll get them, Link promised. That will mean not ogling at every sweet stall we pass, Navi said with a half-hearted smile. Zelda actually laughed. That would be wise, Impa said without inflection. Now, I shall escort you back to your inn. This time, I suggest you stay there, and I will collect you in the morning. Impa's voice was firm, her eyes stern and piercing. Link swallowed, trying to look innocent. How's that possible, he wondered. It hadn't been that long since his escape, had it? He didn't get a chance to find an answer. At that moment, Impa stepped behind him and cleared her throat. Forgive me, Link, but if I do not make it look like you're in serious trouble, the guards will get suspicious. What? Wait! He panicked, wondering just what she had in mind. With no further warning, Impa grabbed him hard by the arm. It wasn't enough to injure him, not like when the Gerudo had grabbed him, but it still hurt. Miss Impa! He yelped, feeling a stab of fear. What are you doing? Just play along, she answered, her voice hushed. Keep quiet, unless I speak to you, and do exactly as I say. Impa dragged him so that he stumbled over his feet. Link looked up, noticing her furious expression. He guessed it was feigned, since Zelda was chuckling quietly, but even then, it still unsettled him. He shot a burning glare back at her, but the princess just waved. To your lessons, Zelda, Impa called loudly, earning a sulky look from the princess. Tell Mr. Solera you were with me, and don't give me that look. She nudged Link forward, taking more care now to make sure he didn't trip over. You there, Navi, Impa said as they approached the main thoroughfare between the castle entrance and the gate. Try to make yourself scarce. Navi muttered something and flew into Link's pocket before the guards could spot her. They came to the edge of the gardens and strode out onto the wide avenue that formed the castle's forecourt. Impa stopped only for a moment. Link was glad because his hand was going numb. Instead of letting him go, and before he could admire this part of the grounds, Impa pinned his arms behind his back and put his head down. Ow! Quiet, Impa whispered sharply. She frog-marched him toward the gate. Ouch! Link protested again. Ow! Ow! Link's arm burned with pain as Impa twisted it. He hoped it was by accident. This is so humiliating. Then Impa paused and Link dared to look up. Impa was staring at one of the closest guards. His armor similar to Dragane's, except that he had a blue sash instead of red. Lieutenant Mills? Yes? Do you recognize this boy? She asked, a hint of anger in her voice. The man frowned, staring at Link. No, my lady. Would you care to tell me, how is it that a child managed to sneak into the castle grounds unnoticed on your watch? The man blushed, and under different circumstances, Link might have felt sorry for him. How did he even manage to get in? The guard asked, stumbling over the words. He climbed onto a section of the wall that had been left unguarded. Impa definitely sounded angry now. And now it appears that I have been delegated to round up children. Several other guards crowded around, some looking embarrassed, others fixing their eyes on Link, clearly annoyed. We're sorry, milady, Mills said, sounding genuinely apologetic. We'll make sure it doesn't happen again. You should be glad that it was just a child playing a game. The Gerudo may not look so kindly upon such a lapse in your duty, Mills, and nor will Captain Dragane or the king. Mills looked suddenly sick, the color draining from his face. Does his lordship know about this? He does not. Dragane does, but I have told him I will deal with this matter personally. Should it happen again, I may not be able to spare you from his wrath, or King Nohanson's. Thank you, Mills said, relief flooding his eyes. We won't let this happen again. To be honest, I wasn't expecting anyone to climb up. For the record, it's not what you expect that should concern you. Impa gave Link a gentle push to steer him on. Then they were moving down the hill towards the town, the guards staring after them. Were you really mad at them? Link dared to ask once they were away from the gates. Quiet, Impa ordered him, making Link look up at her. A small, satisfied smile touched the Sheikah's lips. Then without another word, she steered him back towards the silver mare.